Morning. We normally never say good morning because our event starts earliest in the afternoon, but because of the time frame of the Senate, we start this morning. And we are happy that already some of you are here. We expected much more, but we will see what will happen in the next 2 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends from Madrid and Berlin, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all at this early Monday morning at the Simposium, Heritage and the Transformation of the City. We are glad that the 25th anniversary of the Berlin-Madrid City Partnership gives us the opportunity to get together here at EDE's Network Campus, where normally students are working. A special welcome to the very distinguished groups of experts from both cities, giving lectures and joining the panels today, sharing experiences of Madrid and Berlin. Before Anja Rhein, Program Director of ANCB, will guide you through the day and introduces each of you individually, let me briefly say a few words. Spain, and especially Madrid, are playing a significant role in the European discourse on architecture and urban planning, but also for more than 30 years on our exhibition program at EDES, in my time as director of the Netherlands Architecture Institute in Rotterdam, and today on the Common Architecture Platform of ANCB. The Berlin-Madrid dialogue and collaboration in the field of architecture was and is always of highest relevance, especially in a time where all European cities are undertaking enormous changes and are confronted with fundamental challenges concerning demography, economy, climate, and migration. The question is, what role European cities have to play in the global context, but also, what are the values and potential of our cities within Europe? At finding solutions today and in future, we are all involved as individuals, architects, planners, historians, developers, but also municipalities, institutions, and universities. In negotiating values, memories, and heritage, a source of regeneration as feeding ground and potential for future developments, I think Madrid and Berlin have a leading position in good old Europe. I wish you all a very inspiring day. Thank you, and Anja.
Thanks, Christine. So I just will roughly outline how the day is structured, in terms of running order and also in terms of the concept for the event. Essentially, we're exchanging between Berlin and Madrid around the very large questions of heritage and the transformation of the city. We're exchanging insights on how we value heritage as a guiding concept for the city, essentially. In competitions, for example, with concepts like resilience and sustainability, what is the value of heritage today? We start at the very small scale of the individual building or public space, gathering insights from the experience of leading practitioners here in Berlin and in Madrid. Then we move to the city scale, to the scale of the urban strategy and the role heritage plays there. Then we have presentations from the Mayor of Berlin and the Mayoress of Madrid, and they will hopefully position heritage in terms of the political vision for the city, what role it plays in that conversation. And then after that, we move out further again, and we position heritage in the overall 20th century urban heritage question or a discourse. And then we bring everything back together on the podium here for a discussion. So we're going to hear 4 talks first, each about 20 to 25 minutes long on the scale of the building and the scale of the city. Then our mayors will come and speak to us. And after that, we will have a short break. We will all recharge with a coffee or a drink outside in the cafe, and then we'll invite you back in 10 minutes later or so for the final discussion. And then at the end of the event, we move into the exhibition, where we will open this formally and then invite you all for a buffet lunch. So that is the running order, and I'm going to be a little bit of a pain and try and keep things on time and give reminders, and also probably a little bit aggressively end some presentations if they're running too far over time. So I'm asking for forgiveness in advance. Okay, so what I'll do now is just let you know who is speaking today. Very quickly, I'll ask them one after the other as I call out their name to stand up, and then as they each give their presentation, I will read you their biographies. Okay, so, and I'll do this in the running order of the day. So, presenting to us on the scale of the building, we have Rafael de La-Hoz, who is the director of Rafael de La-Hoz Arquitectos Madrid. Welcome, Rafael. Yeah, you can exactly wait here. Then he will be followed by Harold Müller from David Chipperfield Architects. He's a managing director of the Berlin office. Welcome, Harold. And then we have, focusing on the urban planning scale, Enrique Alvarez Sala from Madrid and Rainer Nagel from Berlin. And then our discussion after the addresses from the mayors will be co-moderated by Fernando Espinosa de la Monteros, Madrid, and by Jörg Haspel from Berlin. Welcome. Good, so will you set up the presentation, and I'll just quickly let you know some more about Rafael de La-Hoz. He is the director of Rafael de La-Hoz Arquitectos. He has managed his own architectural studio for more than 2 decades, specializing both in urban planning projects and in the design and construction of notable architectural complexes in Spain and abroad. For his architectural work, he has received several awards. He's also visiting lecturer at national and international universities and holds a master's degree in management for construction and property companies from the Polytechnic University of Madrid. Thank you very much, Rafael.
Thank you for the presentation, and much more than that, for the invitation to stay today here in Berlin with all of you, ANCB and the mayors, for this opportunity. Thank you very much. Obviously, we are joined together here in Berlin today by a close relationship between Madrid and Berlin. 2 cities, may I say, whose heritage or the history, the build history of Berlin. It's work? Let's go, no? It's all right? Closer. Okay. Better? Let's wait. Okay. It's a 2 city with a heritage or history, built history, that has had an influence on the city, but not defined the development, the plan of the city, the growth of the city. In other words, I may say that we are, or Madrid and Berlin, are not city like Rome, so defined by his past, by its paths and the layout and the history and the heritage, but not in the other hand extreme of, for example, Peking, that had destroyed his heritage, and there are very few evidence on the new Peking of the old one. So, following what I had been asked for, I would like to present 3 or 4 examples of our work recently in Madrid, central Madrid, and that's all. And we will finish with some comments and probably much better on the podium afterwards. Those are the position, the situation of those 4 of our project. You see in central. It's all right?
Yeah, can everybody hear?
Yeah. Sure?
There's a little problem with the mic.
It's all right?
Then we have to repair something. Something, apparently, a connection.
Or may I use this? No? Sure? Okay. That's right? Okay. So, sure. Sure. Okay. So, but it has to be close to the microphone and the screen at the same time. It's not easy. All right. So, Madrid, central Madrid, this is the Retiro Park. There are 2 north of the Retiro, the park, and 2 on the south. Here is, you can see briefly the track of the railway station close to the south corner of the Madrid Central Park. The first example is the headquarters of a Spanish big corporate company, Repsol, a petrol company. The land belonged to the company for a long time. It was the warehouses and the industrial area close to the railway station. Previously, Repsol has taken the decision to move from the north of the city to the south of the city of Madrid, trying to improve the growth of the city in the south, and a very, I had to say, very decision to move to the south is not very common in Madrid. The north is more corporate and finance areas than the south. Here the challenge was to follow the layout of the city, to follow the block, the pattern of the existing city of Madrid, in a way to recover an idea that previously it doesn't exist, because you can see there the area around this railway station has been demolished, all or almost all the old warehouses and industrial buildings around the railway station, and the city joined this area at this particular moment. So the challenge was, this is the building, to follow you see the tracks of the railway station, the railway, to follow the city and to be under the discipline of the city, to following the block as typology, keeping the same height of the surrounding, and creating a central patio, a central courtyard, around which we have to switch on the new buildings. The building followed what it was how to say, if the idea was to be under the discipline of the city, the building has to be the same. So what we did is to rise up the block. We rise up the boundaries of the land to put it up at the square In the first is the land, the second is just 2 columns, the third is a beam, and the fourth is the land hung on this big beam, and in this frame we switch on the building, the offices. So the building follow the site. And the building is a repetition of this cross section all the time, many times in one side and many times in the other, and the third and the fourth. That's all, very simple. Those frames are the structure, at the same time the sound devices protection, and that's allowed to offer to the client a totally freestanding floor plan with no columns, because all the structure is outside and protect the building from the Madrid sun, quite strong, you know. We worked on this central space with Tidman Latz, a German landscaper architect, and a very interesting collaboration preserving the nature, the landscape of Madrid, of pines and all these local green plants and trees. The 4 buildings are connected by very transparent and light bridges that you can see in the plan, and all the vertical core are outside of the plan to keep this completely free. And once again, the section that is, I think, is the more relevant of this project, with this idea of follow the track, follow the city, and raise up the square and switch on the offices. The second one is not far away from Repsol. Repsol headquarters, it is in this picture on the left side of the railway station tracks, and La-Hoz and Velarde Cultural Center is on the right side. It's different because we was lucky enough to preserve one of all those warehouses or industrial building that exist along the tracks of the railway. It was in a very poor situation, damaged with no, all carpentry and glass has disappeared. The roof, all the cover, all the cladding of those industrial shaped roof had been destroyed, and some picture of the interior. See. So it's urban planning office of Madrid, the city hall, who asked us for what use could be suited on this building to be used for, to renovate it for what. So we suggested to make us not cultural center, better, I thought, better than a cultural center is to make a theater for children, because Madrid have nothing for in these services, or this kind of cultural offer, like the children theater, and the municipality accepted this idea, and after make a very careful study of the situation, the track, the history of the building. It has been military, the posts. It has been many things that along the life of the structure of the building. A very typical plan, and we made this very different to Repsol. Here, the idea was to keep the wall. Recover all the original structure, a very beautiful structure on steel. Keep alive again the old walls on foundation that we founded, and following these old tracks to create this new facility for the city of Madrid. Here is the theater. There are two, a modern theater. It could be adapted by configuration, and more Italian old theater, very small for the children, and this is the stage block on the back. It's the only point that we have to demolish or set off the roof to locate this box. We have a very good time recovering the bricks and all the picture and detail, and to keep alive, to recover the original idea. That's a very interesting roof, very industrial. And you can see there on the two theater. On the left is the box of the modern theater, and on the right side, the more traditional theater. And we sit in like it's a box in a box. The old box recovered, preserved, and a new box that don't touch. It's like it's floating. The new box in a way is floating inside the old blocks of the old architecture. With the two plans, and we've finished this project some weeks ago, just very recently, and this very light structure, and you can see this is probably the best image to explain the project. The new very cheap plaster box inside the old block, and a corridor that's allowed the people in a way of circulation around the new facility. It's not in use because Madrid have, as you know, some budget problem, but we hope in the future we'll solve that. The third one is in Gran Via, is a residential building. This is a plan of Madrid that explains what is Madrid city. On there you can see these blocks, strong blocks, as you know, is the Royal Palace. It's an Austrian foundation, and on the right side, the not existing at all today, Palacio del Buen Retiro. In a way, it was the weekend palace. So the kings moved from the palace itself to the weekends with the park behind the palace. And Madrid in between. The old city and the walls. This is Madrid. The rest is extension and extensions. What is that? Oh, good, great. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, this is the old palace, the Palacio del Buen Retiro, the new palace, the park, that now is the central park of Madrid, the old royalty gardens. And at the beginning of the 20th century, Madrid took the decision to connect, in a way, the two palaces with a new big avenue called Gran Via that cut across the city from one side, east, west, the city, call it the Gran Via, in a kind of Italian sventramento that cut the city, split the city in two. Very controversial, but it's like this. This is part of the city and the other, and this big sventramento street that one goes from one side to the other. And alone 40 or 50 years, the building of this new avenue has been erected in different size, but it could be very homogeneous architecture because very eclectic, and the central point is Callao, Plaza de Callao, and the building could rise a little bit up. And in this side, let me show this previously, is one stream. The Royal Palace is behind those buildings. And the most daring building in this, because the street turning in two, make like a bend. In this position, inspired in German expressionist, erected in 1930-33, the Capitol building with a mix of views from cinema and different purposes. And in front of this building was this. You can see the building on process, on construction. Previously, the Spanish Civil War of 1936. It was in a very popular trend, a very typical plan of those times. It's cinema street with a lot of cinema, still existing, most of them. But this building has been demolished around the 60s and replaced by this. Building with a cladding and in a trend very popular after the war on the 50s with aluminium and glass. It's very active, very commercial. And his architecture, his facade are in plaster, very eclectic with different style from neo-Baroque to neo-Renaissance, Spanish. This is about how so controversial it is to make an agreement with the office who preserve, or supposedly preserve, the Madrid heritage. And we finally reached an agreement about the massing. In my view, it was obvious to keep the same height of the close by building, the next building on the left, and try to make, because the volume, it was much bigger for the new zoning regulation, much more bigger than the previous existing building. So we have to raise up to set on an extra volume. But it's to be honest, it's not worried me so much, because I think we needed this volume to make a kind of stepping up to reach or match with the building on his right side. So tight, the site that we had to is very popular in Berlin or Germany, but not so much in Spain. Those rise with elevator garage and the typical plan, and the building. I'm not totally happy about the execution, because it's difficult to maintain the ideas on construction at the end of the process. But you can see here, not this volume, in a way match with this existing building on Plaza de Callao, and make in a way a process of transition between the different level and height of this street. And the fourth one is to finish the Recoletos office in north of Retiro Park. This is again the park, the palace, and the gardens of the palace. The Palacio del Buen Retiro has burned at the beginning of the 19th century, and it doesn't exist at all. Only remained the Museo del Prado, and our new building, not new, a renovation of the building was here very close to this area. It's a big problem, because again, gap of scale between the block of the old city and new building erected on the 60s, 70s in Madrid, with this block that no respect at all the relation with the surrounding and the back, and this is what we did is, it was obvious in my view, first to reduce the volume of the building to match with the nearest building on the left side, keeping a kind of fenestration, a kind of windows that follow the rims of the nearest blocks, and a part of volume that has to match, and again make a dialogue, a transition between this kind of part of the city and on the back, so different block, modern architecture with stripped windows, etc. So we made everything on ceramic, because it's the most used material in central Madrid, the brick in a white color. And as the new use has to be offices, we in Madrid people are very keen about lighting, more than, I don't know why so much. We have a lot of light, but it's very demanding, the client. And in this picture you can see how translucent is, or transparent is the building and his budget. This is everything about the building. And let me finish with a very short reflection about heritage of, the topic that for what we are together here this morning. I'm time? 2 minutes. All right. Oh no, it's just 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes. Just to say that the worst kind, in my view, of a ruin is a ruined idea, not the building, it's the ideas. So many spaces and so much architecture, not only in Madrid and Berlin, are mere remains because, in my opinion, the ideas behind them no longer exist. And we had been unable to renew them. On this surface, and probably in some of my buildings, they may appear modern, but we know that in a way they are dead. Are dead because the idea, the idea of the surrounding, the idea of the site, the idea that exists in this particular part of the city doesn't exist any longer. So laws and knowledge on their own are not up to the task. Because what we needed in a city like Madrid and Berlin is criteria. We need critique, criteria, and creation. That is very interesting that all have a similar etymology. In opposition to blind laws and deaf knowledge, we need critique, criteria, and creation. It is not coincidence, in my view, that in those countries in which laws are the fruit of experience, criteria, heritage has been better served than in those in which laws are based, like in my country, in knowledge. Okay. So to finish this, I think that, the schedule of this conference demand brevity and, in a certain extent, provocation. Hopefully, they're both. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rafael, for so stylishly being exactly on time and for giving us, first of all, the 4 examples that essentially culminated in a very poetic thesis about how you approach heritage in your work. It's very interesting. And the phrase, a ruined idea is the worst kind of ruin, it's lovely. Let's take that with us to the discussion later. Now we're going to welcome Rainer Nagel. Oh, sorry. No, I got that completely wrong, sorry. Harald Müller. Sorry, I was just already at the scale of the city there. Harold has, thank you. Harold is the managing director of David Chipperfield Architects and has stood in for us at the last minute, although we're very glad to have him here. He started working for David Chipperfield Architects in 1994 as an associate architect in the Berlin practice, and as an associate architect in Berlin. And after the practice won the competition for the Neues Museum, Harold founded the Berlin office of David Chipperfield Architects, together with Mark Randall and Eva Schad in 1998. And since then, he has been managing director of the office and became partner in 2011. He is responsible for the management of numerous projects, and among these are the Neues Museum in Berlin, the Museum of Modern Literature in Marbach am Neckar, and the Amaro Pacific headquarters in Seoul. So welcome, Harold. This way. And there's
Thank you very much. So this first image, somebody put in to make sure I'm not David Chipperfield. Heritage and the transformation of the city. What I put together for this morning is an idea of from an approach to a cultural heritage object to urban space proposals. In principle, it is saying how much did the work on Neues Museum and the heritage site in Berlin influence our work. But before we start, I would like to remind where we are. So Berlin, heavily bombed with loss of physical presence, with a strong loss of identity, and left with urban fragments, the loss of industry and economic power, for 40 years divided into two parts, into two political systems, and full of cultural and historical heritage. For Berlin, the last 65 years, the transformation of the city was basically dominated by reconstruction or repair of the city, a repair of an urban fabric. And if you look around, there are still fragments. There's still a lot of gaps in our city. You still can find derelict urban areas, which somehow creates a very unique value to Berlin. And after more than 65 years of repair, I think now it's up to to my generation to create different or an own meaning, what interpretation, when we discuss about the responsibility of heritage. The Neues Museum Berlin, from an approach to cultural heritage object to urban space proposals. The Neues Museum Berlin, located in the heart of the city, badly damaged by the war. The only building on the museum island which was not rebuilt after the war. It stayed as a ruin for more than 60 years, almost as long as it was a museum. In 1997, we won the competition for the reconstruction, and in 1998, we began to work. The Neues Museum is a very special project to us. Firstly, because it's the reason for the David Chipperfield office in Berlin, which was founded in 1998. And not only because of this, I think I can say for everybody who was involved in that wonderful project that what we learned from the building and what we learned from the process has up to date a significant influence to our work. What was the idea? How to respond, how to transform this wonderful existing fabric of the building back into a museum without losing the beauty or even a kind of magic of the ruin. During the project, we often try to explain our concept based on the story of a Greek vase. You find beautiful fragments, and you know there is a bigger idea behind it. And you know there are parts missing. You know you have to fill the gaps to understand or to bring back the bigger picture. And you know, if you want to keep the value or the magic of the historic fragments, you have to fill the gaps very carefully in order to bring back form and figure. And this brings us to the basic concept of the reconstruction of the Neues Museum. As you can see here, these two missing blocks we brought back, and this idea or this picture of the Greek vase and the concept of bring back form and figure was in a way leading us all the years to the result of the project. Here you can see that not only because the tree in front of us, you can see we filled and brought back form and figure. A few slides from the interior to keep the historical fragments, fill the gaps, and bring back the bigger idea. The Egyptian courtyard, the entrance hall, one of the new wings. Another idea can be from the protection of cultural heritage object to urban space developments. Short time after we began to think, or we began to work on the reconstruction of the Neues Museum, it became clear to everybody that the Museum Island needs a master plan, not only to coordinate the work of the other architects on the site, amongst different other requirements. Some of the most important had been to connect the buildings on an existing level with short little pieces. To not only connect the buildings, to also connect the exhibitions. But coming back to the discussion of today, I think another very important requirement of the master plan was, or let's say another important idea of the master plan, was to allow the historic buildings to keep their original use and their original entrance. Because the temporary requirement of a museum is much different to that 100 or 150 years ago. There is a lot of pressure if you reconstruct or work on an historic museum because of the temporary requirements such as coffee shops, garderobe, and restaurants, and all these things. And in order to allow each single project to keep its original concept, idea, entrance hall, or use, one important part of the master plan was to collect the temporary requirement of a modern museum and create a new building on the historical site, which one could see as a requirement of an urban space development and an heritage site. That was, in the first place, the birth of the new entrance building, which is now called the James Seaman Gallery. Which you can see here, it's on the side in front of Neuss. The architectural language inspired by the existing elements on the island, such as the columns of the Kolonnadenhof, the outside, and the big open staircases and the Sockel. Back to the Greek vase again brings us to 2 or 3 examples on a smaller scale of our work, still influenced by the idea of finding wonderful fragments. One is the gallery building on Kupfergraben, which is right on the other side of the museum island. A gap in the urban fabric, a gap in the urban block, and the idea was to bring back form and figure here to the urban block and try to find the bigger picture again to the city. Fill the gap with temporary architecture. Quite interesting detail here is that we took some of the ideas to fill the gap in Neuss Museum with used brick and a thin render. And we saw, in a way you can say, on 2 levels, we were being influenced by our work on Neuss Museum. One is the urban space proposal, and the other one is the materiality. Another project, extension, Joachimstraße. It's a small little office building in the middle of Mitte. Museum Island is here. Again, a similar story. The urban block, gaps of the urban block created by the war, empty spaces, missing pieces, and existing pieces. In a way, a similar concept, closing the block, and so bring back form and figure to the urban space bigger picture, but carefully try to think of different interpretations in the inside instead of just fill back the original volume. We put 2 little concrete boxes into the courtyard and create an open space, which is semi-open space, to the city. Here, the building in the back. This is one of our latest projects, which we just started to think about. It's quite funny, it's an old brewery, like this one here, which we are, I think, here. And the Bötze Brewery, we started to work on that project a few months ago. And so it's not finished, and even the planning is not finished. So we are here in the process of looking at the fragments which we find, collecting them and looking carefully towards them. And try to understand the bigger idea of the project itself and clearly the approach to the city. The Bötze Brewery had a quite interesting concept because they produced beer, but they sold it on the site. So originally, there was a very, very big beer garden, which allows the city to enter the project. And we are very happy that the client is interested in to do the same again. So what I'm saying is, talking about urban space concepts, even how a project is connected to the city can be part of an urban space idea, and I think it's very nice that we can bring back this idea to the city again. But back to the vase, is just, this could be a solution, but we're still looking at it, and we're trying to explore in a way what is the right answer to this, and how does the vase look in that particular part of the city. Thank you very much. I try to match your time.
15 minutes.
Thank you.
Get a gold star. And it's also interesting and probably not surprising that you also picked up on the bigger idea, like Rafael. And maybe later we can talk more about the process of uncovering that idea and then interpreting that idea, and where the balance lies between the subjective and maybe the more scientific approach. So now we move on to the urban planning scale, and we begin with Enrique Alvarez Sala. Welcome, Enrique. Enrique is partner in the practice Rubio und Alvaro Sala Estudio de Arquitectura Madrid. And he is both an architect and an urban planner. He is associate professor of the Department of Construction at ETSAM since 1983. He is housing advisor at the COAM Cultural Foundation and is director of the Master in Advanced Techniques for Construction at the University Europea de Madrid. He and his partner, Carlos Rubio, founded their practice in 1980, and some recent projects include the PwC Tower in the former Real Madrid sports city, the Indra headquarters in Torrejón de Ardoz, excuse my pronunciation, and the Madrid-Rio project, and the Mahu Vicente Calderón urban plan in Madrid. Thank you and welcome. Point that way. Press there for the pointer.
Can I make it here also? Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. My lecture is going to be about the transformation from the river, from Madrid. If one speaks about free spaces, gardens, parks, trees in Berlin, it is probably not a very exciting lecture. But if you see it from our point of view, then it is completely different. It's another story. The first one, I wanted to show some pictures of Berlin and some pictures of Madrid, so that you can have an idea what Madrid is. The density of both cities is completely different. I've taken pictures of the same scale and from the same zones from the city. You can see here the palace from Madrid and the river from Madrid. I don't know. Here, this is the river. the Manzanares. This is the palace here. This is the same scale from Berlin. As you can see, even the color is completely different. In Berlin, the problem is to build things in these voids. They are all over the city. In Madrid, it is completely different. You have a very dense city with many buildings, an old city with much sun. You can find the trees only in the streets because there's no place for nothing more. So you have a necessity to make some free spaces and to put planting trees everywhere. This is the 19th century city from Madrid, the upper side, and you can see Mitte here, unten. If we speak about the river in Berlin is a big one with even ships inside. If you speak about the river from Madrid, as it was before this transformation, it was really a highway. In summer, the river almost doesn't have water at all. It was really a highway, and the big green spaces that are in Madrid were all isolated by this highway, and it was almost impossible to go inside. Well, this idea of making something with a river in Madrid is not new. Here in Berlin, there was already a project who has the idea of make something about this river. This river before 1984 was like this. You can see it was the backside of the city, and the city was cut in two parts. The part near the palace and the other one, outside the city. One first transformation of this river was purifying the water. And this was made in 1984. But in the first years of this century, the idea of the city hall was much more ambitious. They wanted to bury the traffic and to gain upper space to make something. They didn't know in this moment what they can build there. But there were 4 years where they work in under the earth, making the tunnels so they can put the highway on the earth, and they can gain a void to make a park or something like this. It was made a competition, international competition, to say what we can make with the city. It was in some way open-heart surgery that was made there. It was very hard, but after 4 years, we had 7 kilometers of underground traffic and a big void where we can make something special. Sometimes it is more important to think what have we done before, because we can make something very nice on the upper side, but the most important things were made before. The works to bury the highway was terrible. and the investment was also very big. To have an idea of what was the dimension of this project, it takes from Alexanderplatz to the Kurfürstendamm here. Ne? Also 7 kilometers right. Well, and then the problem was what should be made in this country. What was our idea with the project? We started to think of the river as a geographic point of view, not just accident in the city. We thought more the city was an accident in the river. So the transformation should be not only what we can make in the city, but more we can make with the river, so that we can understand the river as a river that comes from the snow on the upper side until a much warmer landscape. So between these two landscape, we should put inside the city of Madrid as more landscape. And this was the idea of the project. So we wanted to give the possibility to go to the nature through the river and to make the river as a gate to nature from Madrid. Many years the river has gone through Madrid almost hidden without having the possibility to go from one part of the city to another, and was, if you don't know where to put a highway or where to put it on the river. So this idea was to sue the big green areas in the city. Perhaps you have the feeling that in Madrid we don't have green areas. We have very big ones. The only problem was they were all isolated, and this new operation of the river gave the possibility to connect both, connect all of them. Casa de Campo is the hunting property of the royal family. On the north, Monte del Pardo, and on the south, La Vega, the river, Henares. This is the Monte del Pardo. You can see here the Mediterranean wood. This is Casa de Campo, a very big one in the city, in the center of the city, but very isolated. And this is the south of Madrid. And in the middle, you can find the Castellana. This is the big axe with, which give open space, a bit of oxygen to the city. And the idea was we had the possibility to connect both sides. Well, to connect the city, there were made 100 bridges. You have to think we had before only 10. And all the 10 was traffic bridges. No one single pedestrian crossing between the both banks. Another story was that there were places where the buildings were in the river, just on the border of the river. And to hide all these very bad constructions, we thought it was necessary to put a new facade, and we thought it would be better to put trees. all along the river. What kind of trees? Well, we thought we would use pines, and pine is a tree that doesn't need much care. Can grow like this on the upper side of the tunnels full of beton. So you can put wood all in front of the houses, and we selected this kind of trees, which were more sculptural, more expression. No? And big ones, naturally, because we don't have much time. We wanted to have this wood as soon as possible, so that we can hire the buildings. And this is the aspect now of the river, with many spaces for kids. I must say there are more than 200 mil people on each Sunday on this place. No? 200,000 people. Well, we are going to make now a quick trip through all the river as it is now, looking of the aspect of the river, of the cities, before and after, so that you can have an idea of how this works been. No? This is the Avenida de Portugal. This is the main street that comes from Portugal, from the southwest Spain, and was a very heavy traffic who comes from the very populated areas of the city in the west of Madrid. And here you can see the same place without traffic. We put the same trees that you can find in Extremadura, the almond trees, and we used this possibility to make a big gate to Casa de Campo on the right. So one of the big green areas of Madrid is going to be much more useful for people in the city. You can see here the highway and new free space, and we have also made a little bit more Casa de Campo here, all this piece here, and this big hard surface was thought for city events like fireworks, all this. This is a wonderful place in front of the palace. We gave also continuity through this bridge between the Casa de Campo and the gardens of the palace. So you can have this view from the old royal palace in Madrid. This Segovia Bridge is one of the old bridges in Madrid, a traffic one. We just put a park there. We put also some fountains there, some so you have water surface for summer. In Madrid is very hot in the summer. This is the only piece of the highway that we maintained. It was transformed in one pedestrian bridge. here you can see the main course of the river before and after works. So here's the people. We've made many new pedestrian crossing, as you can see here. This one is the new one, but here you can see an old one was used as pedestrian crossing also. It was the dock of the river after the purification of the water. This is the only piece of the highway that wasn't put underground because the existence of this stadium here, it was impossible to hide this. And this is Parque Arganzuela, the brightest, widest part of the river. This is the bridge, also an old one, now pedestrian. This is the pedestrian crossing from Nouvelle. Well, and here we have made, this was a big expectation of all the people in Madrid. The river should have a beach, and it was, as you can think, almost impossible. But we wanted to make something similar so that the promises of the before the project could be maintained in some way. We made this surface of water very without deep and moist all over. It's not a beach, but it's quite similar. We have put also many sport places, tennis, skating, and we have built these two bridges, these two pedestrian bridges, to connect a new cultural forum, cultural center that's going to be in the old buildings there. There's the slaughterhouse and all this. And we made these two bridges. It was one Spanish artist who take a small picture of the people in the neighborhood so they can see themselves it was fantastic. We also made some buildings there, some new ones, only services for the city. As this one is a museum for the explication of all the works, but we made also some firework brigade, also a building for the police, things like this. Well, this is what we are now planning for this piece of the highway who wasn't put on the earth. Well, I want to think a bit about what get Madrid through this terrible effort. It's 7 years of works, a very big investment, and in one side we can think there are many things made, sports, places, trees, parks. But on the other side, I think it's still more important. You have a new view of Madrid, and a new Madrid is possible now. The new plan of Madrid, the urban plan of Madrid, is thinking about the possibility to connect all the green spaces so that you can go with the bicycle from one part from the city to the other one, almost without crossing a car. Well, maybe in Madrid, in Berlin, it is a very normal thing. But in Madrid, 10 years ago, it was unthinkable. It was impossible to make something like this. And you can have, you see all the green spaces in Madrid now, with very little operation like pedestrian crossing or boulevards. Or you can connect all the green spaces, so you can have two cities, one over the other one. Well, when I see this old picture, then I think about what the big transformation in Madrid has been with this project. And I think, as one can have the idea, it's been terrible moments for the people, for the neighborhood, but as you can say in Deutsch, es lohnt sich. Das ist, und ich finde, es ist eine wunderbare Transformation. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Enrique. You're also on time, and I know that's not easy when you're not speaking your native language. And yeah, it was a very good introduction to how heritage can work at the scale of the city. I think you were a little bit modest when you said that sometimes the most important things are made before and you only make things nicer. I think you made the idea of connecting the city through landscape very convincing through your work. And as you say, now Berlin has a new, or Madrid has a new idea of what it is. Okay, and we are on time, which is fantastic. So we're moving on now to our last speaker in this first section, who is Rainer Nagel, Director of the Federal Foundation of Baukultur Berlin. And that's the first time we're welcoming Herr Nagel with this title. He's been here many times before as the head of urban development and public spaces from this, the Berlin Senat. So I think now we thought you would come and speak from that experience, but you can also speak from the experience of heritage as something within the concept of Baukultur. So we're delighted to have you wearing both hats. Thanks very much, Rainer.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's nice to be here. And I want to add the issue of today of heritage to the process of transforming cities, because you did it in Madrid, we did it in Berlin, and we are in a twin city partnership since 25 years, and it's, I think, important to see how things went. So, a green hell, Berlin, as we heard it, completely different from Madrid. And what am I going to talk to is the framework conditions of planning in Berlin and what is important to transform the city, what role does heritage and the existing city play for the development of the city. Second thing is the so-called Planwerk Innenstadt, which was something like an urban design framework for years in Berlin. Then the urban development strategy in working with strategic areas, as we heard it just from Berlin, from Madrid, this green development concept with about 4 billion euros invest. And then the priority of Baukultur, the foundation of Baukultur, which I'm now work in, and to come to a concept, city development concept 2030 in Berlin, and something like a conclusion. To focus on Berlin. Berlin lays in the middle of Europe, like Madrid lays in the middle of Europe, but the importance of this geostrategical situation more and more becomes important because we are, to be honest, still at the edge of the old West Europe, at the edge of the East Europe, and we are combining North and South, and that is important for developing the city. That's something like the framework, the identity of which we work on. And since years, we work on a geostrategical suggestion, which says perhaps Berlin, combining North and South, can be as much as successful as the West European countries has been with the blue banana. To focus on Berlin, Berlin is situated in the east of northeast of Germany, and it's a bit a monocentral place in the city, and in a country like Madrid is. And so each importance, each central offer is concentrated in the city of Berlin, organizing with accesses in the surrounding of Brandenburg and the neighborhoods. And we are only reachable 6 million inhabitants in the region of Berlin and Brandenburg. So this star concept on the axes of infrastructure, streets, settlement areas, railways is important to understand the city. The city itself has about 3.5 million inhabitants. We do have about 900 square kilometer size, 40 to 40 kilometers, and we do have a two-folded system with a city development, which we were, and 12 boroughs, which are in charge for building permissions, in charge for legal planning law, and also in charge of the first step of heritage concepts in the city. Berlin is a growing city, like probably Madrid is growing. We have a high fluctuation in the city. That means a big number of new inhabitants came to Berlin, another big number went away. So the real Berliner is become very seldom. We are a city of a high fluctuation, and we are a growing city from about 3.5 million inhabitants up to 3.8 million inhabitants in 2030. That means we have a need of space, of residential, of office, and so on in the future. Although we have a lot of voids, a lot of places in the city, we are looking after opportunities. And that is very dramatically going in the issue of residential. To look after place for residential is important because the quality which is combined with this is often demanded. On the other hand, Germany and I think also Spain and the European countries are shrinking up to 2100, and that means that the landscape has become more and more empty, and we have to look after strategies also to combine this shrinking and growing regions in a real strategy. To say it in one word, Berlin is something like a city of science and knowledge, wisdom, not a merchant city, not a bank city, not a trade city. And so we have to do something out of these competences, being a city with a lot of fluctuation, a tolerant city, also a city with knowledge in the city, but doing little out of it. And so looking after real jobs for work is still one of the biggest challenges in Berlin, because Berlin, different from Madrid, is poorer as a city, poorer than its nation. That's a completely different thing from other cities. All the big cities have a bigger value of gross development product than the country. It's different around in Berlin. That's one of the reasons you have to have in your backyard, because development comes out of this structural change from industrial city with all the emptied industrial areas, which we heard, Börze-Brauerei, to a service city, to a city of new creative jobs. To start with the spatial conditions, with the reunification about 23 years ago, and the big challenges which was given to bring those both planning systems, the West Berlin planning system, land use plan, and the East Berlin system together. And you see it, perhaps you see it quite easily, that the West Berlin part is a grid of development, and the East Berlin part is still a concept which runs with radial streets towards the old castle, towards the Alexander Tower, and that is very important to understand the city. The preliminary work were done with looking after the fabric of the city, which is a high density. It's included in the S-Bahn ring, in the head of the dock, which we called S-Bahn ring, and on the axes of settlement areas. After years, we were able to create a new land use plan for the city, and including in this land use plan, it was a polycentric system of the city with two main centers, east and west in the city, and the 12 borough center in the city surrounding. So from the beginning to hide away the suburbanism concepts which were done in other big cities and which were hide away in Berlin because of its isolation, we announced to go back to the inner city to develop the things which are given in the inner city. And the strategic element, which was something like an urban design framework, was the so-called Planwerk Innenstadt, which was we heard it from Harald Müller, which was something like a design concept which says we want to fulfill, to repair, to reconstruct our old European city, because the infrastructure in the streets, the canals, the piles, the subway stations, and so everything is still there. And restoring this and bringing back the old density to the city was one of the biggest issues. The reason for that is that the city with a high density before Second World War, we can perhaps Berlin compare with even the density of Madrid, was demolished in Second World War, more than 50% in the inner city. And then between 1953 and 1989, the city was again not demolished, but transformed by us, by planners, by looking after new opportunities for new concepts of settlement area, after new traffic or infrastructure accesses, and so the density again was increasing. In that time, some new things were under construction, like the socialist modernism or Hansaviertel, the same thing in West and East Berlin. And the whole time, this special aspect of being inside borders in West Berlin, but also being inside borders in East Berlin, which was something like a political border, is very important, because this ribbon of this wall inside the inner city was not only a wall, it was a system of space, and inside a front wall, a back wall, the space in between, that was something like a structural element. And today our power goes and our strategies goes in the direction of saving or bringing back this structure as a monument, as a heritage project, but also as an element of open space development in the inner city. And then, step by step, the city was fulfilled. That was new buildings in Berlin, and you see the East Berlin part, Friedrichstadt, was fulfilled in the strategy of the European city, even from the GDR. Step by step, those opportunities of fulfilling the inner city, of regaining the fabric, was done in, very complicated manners, because you have to pre-invent in the infrastructure, you have to find solution, then you have to develop areas like this, and then you can sell the ground and try to make something out of it. Here I miss a thing. There's a map where the new government buildings were implemented in the city, and it was so important that we gained our new government and not brought it to a government district outside the city, but brought it inside and regained a lot of existing building and restored them for government. This process is still running. For example, Molkenmarkt, just in the city center, is transformed or could be transformed in an inner city situation, but it costs a lot of energy, costs a lot of money, and so this projects will run for the next 20 years. The last step, if you want it like this, the closing stone for everything is probably the castle, which is under construction. You see the competition for the castle, more than 1,000 works done, but the result is the castle as a castle, and these are images from the new building, which will be constructed as a Humboldt Forum just in the middle of Berlin. So what we gained with this Planwerk Innenstadt is not only a restored and old city that was announced as a critical reconstruction, and the result we probably get a reconstruction, not as critical, not as creative as we hoped, but we get a lot of open spaces, as a colleague from Spain announced, promenades, walk sides at the river, and we got a lot of urban design ensemble. Not the single building was important, not an icon building like Guggenheim, but an urban design ensemble like Pariser Platz, like Potsdamer Platz, Friedrichstraße, and so on. So going on with this strategy, we now extend the Planwerk Innenstadt, which was only 30 square kilometer, 10 kilometer to 3 kilometer, to the whole head of the dock. And you see, house by house, we are able to know where we want to go to. And inside this fabric of the Planwerk Innenstadt, we have this legal corridor of inventing in the existing situation, the urban renewal program by law, by tax, and so on, which were given to the city to restore the existing situation a bit like it was. And Berlin, as you know, is UNESCO World Heritage City, and we do have projects now, another picture was lost, with the settlement areas of the 20s. Professor Haspel probably will announce this. Berlin got an international place by being a capital, more than 144 embassies, like Spain, for sure. And out of this internationality, a lot of tourists come to Berlin. Berlin, since years, is at place 3 in the world, London, Paris, and Berlin. And out of this touristicization, some problems also come for the heritage building. Neues Museum, for example, at Museums Island, is under the influence of about 3.5 million tourists a year. The Louvre in Paris has about 12 million tourists a year, and Berlin has an opportunity of giving offers for 100 million tourists or guests a year. So if all those guests want to go to a Museums Island, then we probably very quick have big problems. So our strategy as planners is also to stretch this touristification process for whole the city and find other opportunities to hide away those big influence on the old traditional islands. The strategic areas concept was lost, so I go to the east-west corridor, the axes. That is a measure where we try to work in an urban design level for new strategies for the city. The the southeast corridor, which runs from the city to the new airport and which offers a new opportunity to this corridor, for example, Schöneweide, which has been an industrial complex with old buildings included. And out of this, strategy, first work with the Planwerk Innenstadt, then work with the whole inner city. Now we try to concentrate our strengths on strategic areas. That is done because of our money and also our power is not able to do everything at each time. So the strategic projects were coming out of infrastructure, whereas things under development by, for example, transformation of airport land or of water bodies. And these strategic areas, let me quickly run through, are places like, for example, the surrounding of the main station, the new main station, which is a railway cross in Berlin, which combines not only the city on a central place where more than 300,000 passengers a day are. It also is a central place in Germany and in Europe for the railway. And in north of this area, we have existing 40-hectare land. There are protected building included. And this 40 hectare can be transformed. We did a master plan for this, master plan which shows quarters orientated around the existing building, which are all those buildings are included in the process. They are something like an impulse for the atmosphere of these quarters. And the concepts are done like this. The urban design concept is transformed in a strategic master plan, which is able to be developed by a high flexibility in the process. However, the open space, the network of ways, the connectivity and the cohesion of the spatial conditions are the motor of development, and therefore we every time do some open space competition to make the open space something like a framework for the single buildings which are included in. And green in a city as in Madrid is more and more important for the city. At the end it will look like this. Or the Spree area, the water body of Berlin, which has in the east sector a high dimension. There's no master plan given there. It's only part by part development done by investors or done by the districts. No things work really together as a master plan. And the strategy was to implement intermediate function as pioneers for a new frequency for usages in this former borderland, that is the East Side Gallery. And what was done out of a protest of people, because this project wasn't really good communicated, it was communicated as a media city project, was to make a thing which investors often do. They announce their new world with transparency volumes, and those transparency volumes can be done dark. So if you paint transparency volume, a dark red and so on, that's a big danger, and that big danger done by protests out of this situation were done, and so the inhabitants in this region were against the development of new dense buildings, buildings at the water, and they want to have more quality at the water with promenades, a lower density, and so on. So things changed, and what is done now is a new development done by professionals together with inhabitants and together, which is very important, with users who are able to perhaps only fulfill 25 square meters and use something good to be implemented in the projects. So this concept now for the place at the water body, something like a village which offers connectivity and open views to the water, and which has halls and small houses at the halls, and will look like this, very strange if you compare it with the old Berlin buildings, a new dimension, and we will see how architectural discussion will come under the influence of these new and modern projects. Our old airports, if the new airport will be open in Southwest, we do have to close Tegel, and we already closed Tempelhof. And what is very important with Tempelhof is this big building, which is the third biggest building in the world after Pentagon and after Ceausescu Palace. So it has about 300,000 square meters, place 1.2 kilometer length, and it's very big. And the question is given how to transform this area. The idea was to make a big park out of it. The reason for this big park is the climate situation of cooling down neighborhoods by cold air in the night, ventilation, and by opening it, the people in the surrounding very much like this open space as an offer, as an opportunity of having the nature, having a landscape part inside the inner city. And it's become something like an image for Berlin. So it's Berlin style, and the strategy again by developing this area by intermediate function is very much focusing on this Berlin style. On the other hand, it's important to find solutions for this big existing building, which is under development and which has to keep like it is, and looking for new creative function, which is very, very difficult. A public-owned company is under charge of developing it. And not only the building is important, also the open space, which we're running through a competition done by Grossmax, landscape architects, and the development of neighborhood areas in the surrounding, offering for residential, which is very important, and a new library. Or Tegel Airport, which is still open and will be closed in the next 2 years, hopefully. And there another big transformational area is given, and also the idea of what is on with this existing terminal buildings, only 40 years old, but something like an important thing for the future. So our strategy was step by step to develop this area with public participation. The first step was to bring a vision idea for the whole thing. The architect, Meinhard von Gerken, announced a master city project for Berlin, rebuilding its terminal in energy plus city, and then step by step we developed alternatives, a landscape alternative, a mixed-use city, energy plus city, a working area or an Olympic Games area or expo area where event can take part. Or we asked whether we forgot something. And this process was announced to the public, brought the result of a working area and a technology city, science city, and by GMP, the architects from the terminal, the answer was given what is able to be transformed in this existing terminal. They announced something like a lectural space and a university which we can implement it in this area. So working with the existing building is very important, also as an impulse for developing the whole Tegel Airport as a technology center for university and new production, industrial production, think about work in the city. So if we focus on the foundation of Baukultur, we, looking after our challenges, looking after the mega trends of development, which is very important, the development of population, how it is, the development of the demographic change, the climate change in our city, the change of, yes, social values. And therefore we announced 3 topics. The one is mixed quarters, residential is important. Second is open space, which becomes more and more important in cities and the infrastructure. And third is the design of planning processes, and we announce everything together with living space of the future, focusing city and country. That is important as a framework for everything we do, also with heritage and restoring existing situation and implementing new buildings in historical neighborhoods. So open space, the infrastructure. In the next years, a lot of money will spend in Germany in the infrastructure, streets, mobility, open parks and gardens. And there we can, as planner, can profit with our strategies, for example, the rainwater management in cities. That gives new opportunity of coming to the water and perhaps in every city swimming in the water. Or the way of new promenades, the way of bringing open space in the neighborhood of historical ensemble is so important because we have so much space. Even in Madrid, I don't know the numbers, but 44% of the area in Berlin is green, parks, gardens, and so on, and that is owned by the city. 44% our own land, and if you are owner of the land, then you can do something out of it. For example, parts of the Mauer strip, the wall strip, is owned by the government and owned by the city. So if you have little money and you want to do something like out of it, it's something like a Pareto principle of development, then you have focus on open space strategies, not like Chicago did or like New York did, which are cultural projects and not landscape projects. But if you have little money, let it grow like this, form a railway land, implement a little planning, and then by also looking after the old function, you can offer perhaps open space. So rethinking your city, see it different around, not only with the green, perhaps with the heritage building, perhaps with the existing situation is so important. If you take the last example for this, the big Tiergarten, our green island in the city, can be much more, can become much more important for the city development to develop out of this green strategic area, which is also a restoring project. We have a garden heritage program in Berlin. This garden heritage program says not only saving and developing the existing park, but connect it with the neighborhoods and do something out of it for the whole city. Strategic processes more and more become important, even with the open space development, and we focus with our green vision in Berlin on 3 issues: the urban nature in the city, the beautiful city, the beautiful green city and streets, and the productive landscape, very easily shown with this picture. People say the older I become, the more I need the nature, the green, and the city. Yes, and you can combine something like a strategy. If you look for strategy, heritage strategy, it's important to have goals. 17 could be a very narrow goal, 30 the goal of demographic change, and then the goals with the climate change mitigation and adaptation of the city to the climate change challenges. The quarters are important because we need big residential in the next years. 1 minute. And 1 minute. And therefore, we look after qualities in the quarter. And what is important if you implement new houses is the ground floor. The ground floor needs to be open space, a public space, and not a closed area for the city. And in Berlin, I think so, former years in Madrid, housing has been the biggest challenges, 100,000 new apartments needed in Berlin, and it's important how they will be organized, how they will look in the future. The creative function of those housing, new housing, have to be involved in the process, and what you see there are old fabrics, old housing, and the usages are looking for the Gründerzeitbebauung. That means existing buildings out of the 20s, because they are high ceilings, flexible ground floors, 20 square meters, and so on. And perhaps we have to look after new Gründerzeit in our new architecture. So that is the reason also to look after the quarters in Tempelhof and Tegel. And last point, the processes are important, even heritage, even implementing old housing and restore them has to be announced to the public. There must be conferences. You have to offer your arguments. Architects has to inform about their strategies because that is important. You see our strategies and the way to a new strategic goal, which is the Urban Development Concept 2030 in Berlin, which is very important, which also involved such cultural issues, not only social or economic issues. To come to the end, I only focus very quickly. The urban development is mastering and designing the whole city. 90% is already done, and we have to implement our heritage and urban design needs in this process. The task is a high quality of everything which is involved, integrated processes. That means Baukultur, which can't be translated, and therefore we need not only architects, we need planners, we need technicians, we need politicians, and we need the people who work in the city. And Berlin has, in the last years, tried to balancing out the processes top down and bottom up and become successful in and with strategic areas. Thank you for listening.